I did my first ultra endurance cycling race when I was 21 years young, and I was not ready for any definition of the word ready. It was the furthest I've ever cycled. The distance of 230 kilometers was almost meaningless to me. It's like telling me that the sun is 150 million kilometers away. Sure, I can appreciate that that's a big number, but my brain can't compute how very far that is. My training was lackluster, disorganized, slapdash. I don't know, I was young. I was on my own at university without a training support system, and I just knew very little about training, racing, or performing. I don't really remember much of the 22 hours of that race. I must have blocked it out to protect myself. But I do remember two pivotal moments. The first was getting to the top of a mountain after what felt like years of freezing water crossings and vicious hills. It was pitch black, and guess it was around midnight. It was cold, and I was in tears. "I can't do this," I sobbed. "I'm going to quit at the next aid station." All of my teammates agreed, probably just relieved that it hadn't crossed my mind to sit down and refuse to get up again. And off we went on our bikes into the winter night. Finally, we arrived at the aid station where our support team was waiting with hot chocolate. We all crammed into the camper van, huddled around the little camping table in there, eating and drinking food handed to us in thermos flasks or cooked up on the little gas camping stove. We laughed, we rested, and the second memorable moment happened. Without a word, without another moment of contemplation or a gap for overthinking it, we all bundled up again, got on the bikes, and finished the race. I didn't quit, and the experience taught me a valuable lesson. Mental toughness is real. It changes how you engage with the sport, and it affects performance. It can increase your enjoyment of hard things. It can help you to continue when you want to stop. And it can be the difference between achieving your goals and not. But it was not until many years later that I realized that mental toughness can be learned and trained. I was 29 and training for my first ultramarathon. If you knew me at the time, that sentence would not compute. Laura, running. I had a couple years of endurance activity under my belt. I did the 230k cycle race another 2 times, as well as a bunch of other multi-day cycling events. I had learned how to row and worked my way into the A crew. I had even begrudgingly started going to the gym. But I had never run. In fact, I definitely categorized myself as not a runner. I remember a journal entry from when I was about 14 years old that bemoaned, in typical dramatic teenage fashion, the fact that I would never be able to run a marathon. I'd always struggled with my Achilles tendons and my ankles. In fact, when I started my tentative journey into running when I was 29, doing the NHS Couch to 5K program, it was the first time in 3 years that I could even consider running pain-free. So, when a friend convinced me to sign up for South Africa's most famous ultramarathon, 88 kilometers of road running called the Comrades Marathon, I naturally gravitated to a book enticingly entitled The Non-Runner's Marathon Trainer. This is a wonderful book, in part because the authors are just so convinced that anyone can run a marathon, and they even have the data to back it up. The stories and words of advice from past participants are also just so encouraging and affirming. But the reason this book actually changed my life is because it focused on and discussed different strategies for dealing with the mental ups and downs that come from engaging with an endurance sport, or tough things in general. It was the first time I realized that mental toughness can be taught and trained, and it was an introductory guide on how to do it. Over the years and many more endurance events, I've developed some of my own strategies, which I'll discuss next. But the thing from this book that I still do is sort of running mantras. My favorite one to be used on a hill is chanting to yourself, big leg, small hill, big leg, small hill. I challenge you to try it and to not feel uplifted. I tested it again this morning on my cycle, and it made me both smile and try a little bit harder up the small hill. In the lead up to our first ever marathon, my training partner and I were chatting about mental strategies. Sure, I had never run a marathon, but by this point I had done a bunch of endurance cycling events, so I wanted to, impart some wisdom. If you ever feel like, when you feel like crying and quitting the race, I started to say. Yes, I know, she interrupted. I must find my why and push through, blah, blah, blah. I looked at her in amazement. That approach had honestly never occurred to me. No, I said. I was going to say that when you feel like crying and giving up, you should probably eat something. There are two lessons here. Firstly, when doing hard things, the truth is going to get hard. Feeling down, wanting to cry, considering giving up, these are actually normal responses to being in hard situations, and I don't think it's useful to beat yourself up about it. The purpose of mental training is to develop the techniques that you'll use to handle adversity, not to avoid adversity. The outcome of effective mental training is that you embrace uncomfortable, high pressure and high stakes situations without emotion or judgment. The second lesson is that the outside world, how well fueled you are, whether there's a stone in your shoe, the elevation gain of your event, your competitors, all of that impacts your mental space. Effective mental training allows you to address the challenges that you're facing as part of the process and to thrive within the challenge of the outside world. And there are two ways that you can do this. One, you can change the world as much as is in your power to, or you can change how you perceive the world. When you feel like you want to cry during an endurance event, you can eat that bar. You can notice that there's pain in your foot, and you can stop to remove the tiny pebble that is causing the pain before it turns into a blister. If there is the unfortunate adversity or challenge that you can't change, the rain and wind, the massive hill in front of you, you can change how you perceive it. When I'm in the right mental state, I love running in bad weather. Actually, let me just change the music so that you can feel what I mean. I love running in bad weather. I feel like I'm beating the weather with every step forward. I spread my arms and literally embrace the headwind, feeling very alive as it buffets my body. Chanting, big leg, small hill, reframes the hill as something trivial, laughable, conquerable. It turns out that there are actually lots of strategies that incorporate body language as a way to reframe your situation. And lots of these are evidence-backed. When I embrace the wind, my posture causes certain hormones to be released. More testosterone, less cortisol. When I giggle at big leg, small hill, my facial expressions signal to my brain that I'm okay, that things are fine. And as a response, my rate of perceived exertion decreases. When I switch my gaze from the road 3 steps in front of me to the beautiful scenery and horizon, I become better at going far. When I thank marshals and encourage other athletes in races, I'm actually improving my cardiovascular stress response. Mindfulness can also help. I like doing a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 exercise. Notice 5 things you can see, 4 things you can feel, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing that you can taste. This allows you to step beyond your current bubble of suffering without denying that there is suffering. Perhaps the thing that catches your attention is the splash of red of a hidden flower, but it might also be the terrifying demon downhill that's ahead. Or perhaps all 4 of the things that you can feel are pain. Your feet, your legs, your bum on the saddle, your just very essence of being. And that's fine. Just noticing is a part of mental toughness. So even if you can't change your physical situation, you can improve your mental state. And that, in return, will improve your performance, which will then further improve your mental state. Knowing this has drastically improved my self-talk. I now notice when I'm telling myself harmful things. I acknowledge that this is normal, and then I use any of the strategies above to change my self-talk until it serves me. This is similar to the RISE framework that Sean Bearden, Dr. Ultra, describes in his podcast. R is for recognize. You recognize that you're having negative, unhelpful, and destructive thoughts. Maybe you're going slower than expected. You need to recognize that this means you're feeling disappointed, that you're not going to make your goal time, or embarrassed that so many people are passing you. Accept these thoughts and feelings as you would accept a compliment or a gift. You just receive them as yours. I is for identify, identifying the emotions you're having. Anger, disappointment, embarrassment, fear, and you see these emotions as separate from you. S is for switch. You switch your focus from this internal stuff that you've identified to the external world. You do not suck, but what's happening does suck, but you don't. E is for execute. Execute the steps to create better external conditions. Identify what needs to be done to the outside world to help you feel better. Eat that fuel, take that stone out of your shoe, walk for a bit, and then do it. So in summary, you recognize your thoughts, identify the underlying emotions, switch your focus from the internal to the external, and execute the steps to create a better condition. Of course, none of these strategies will help you if you don't want to be there in the first place. No chat about mental toughness is complete without talking about motivation. It's not that I haven't tried to figure out the topic of motivation. Come on, it's me. Did you really think I wouldn't overthink something like this? But I can't quite get my thoughts on motivation down into a neat little packet. I spoke a bit about this in my video about the 200-kilometer cycle around the Icelandic volcano that I did last year. The motivation of connecting deeply with nature and enjoying scenic foreign landscapes that are not typically accessible to tourists, good reasons, were not quite enough to get me through the dark place, and we nearly quit within a stone's throw of the finish of that race. Other good reasons that didn't help during that race: personal challenge and growth, setting and achieving a goal, adventure and exploration, community and camaraderie. To be fair, maybe it is because those good reasons have helped me in previous events. I've gotten what I need from them. In my current rock climbing plateau, the motivation of personal challenge and growth are enough to keep me going. When I was rowing, community and camaraderie were the motivation I needed to break myself in the boat with my crew to make the finish line. And what motivated me to finish my endurance ocean swim, a wild and cool event, with the hardest part being navigating the rocks and the surf at the exit, was that it felt like an adventure. And setting and achieving a goal, the audacious goal that pushed me to the edge of what I thought I could do, was my motivation for entering my one and only ultramarathon. But again, this good reason was not quite enough to motivate me when I was chasing cutoff times in the middle of that 12-hour ultramarathon run. But you know what did get me through? A bad reason to finish. YouTuber Campbell Walker calls this your dark why. The underlying, often unacknowledged reasons you do things. I may have obvious and socially acceptable motivations for my actions, but they are often deeper and potentially more self-serving or negative motivations that I either might not be fully aware of or just might not want to admit to you. So the thing that got me through my ultramarathon was not a good reason, a desire to challenge myself, but a bad reason, a desire to prove myself. I kept thinking, what will people say if I drop out now? My dark why could be classified as a deep-seated need for validation from others, or even a desire to be seen as superior. both of which can stem from feelings of inadequacy or insecurity. Campbell's list of dark whys include insecurity and doubt, fear of failure or rejection, guilt and fear of consequences, revenge and spite, self-disgust, shame, and the list goes on. These are not good or pretty reasons to do something. Confronting and understanding these hidden drivers of behavior can be crucial for personal growth and to develop healthier motivations. The reason we finished the Iceland epic cycle around the volcano for 200 kilometers is also on Campbell's list of dark whys, the fear of missing out on future milestones. Given that we were healthy and capable of finishing, what we were feeling was temporary and we would regret not finishing. This regret, pointed out by someone from the outside, makes you realize that your identity, an important part of who you think you are, rests on finishing this event. And I guess this acceptance of reality, of the situation that you're in, is the last thing that I've learned. At the end of last year, I was doing just this terrible lab testing, this running test for a PhD research project. It's 6 times 15-minute efforts at 70% of max treadmill speed, followed by a 5K time trial. It was brutal. More than 2 hours of running at high effort on a treadmill in this bleak little room while having your blood and your oxygen exchange measured every 15 minutes. No fresh air or moving scenery, no music, no marshals or other people to chat to. This is a place to practice mental toughness if ever there was one. And I did try many of the strategies that we've already discussed. Counting how many orange things I could spot in the lab, looking for that tiny sliver of horizon and trees and sky I could see out of the window, and pushing through for science because I wanted her research results to be clean. But surprisingly, the strategy I ended up finding most motivating was one of acceptance. For the foreseeable future, for too long to worry about, this is what you're going to be doing. So just relax into it. Don't obsess about future pain. Just let it unfold. This is your life now. Now, I'm definitely not saying that I know everything about mental toughness. I still have so much to learn. And my new exercise obsession proves it. I've started rock climbing, and I have never cried so much during just normal outdoor training sessions. Sure, some of it is frustration for knowing what to do and just being completely unable to do it. But I think there's something else happening. There's something about the exposure, the innate fear of falling, the heart-stopping fright of a hand or a foot slipping, and then just this image of your body failing you and letting you plummet to the ground that requires a whole different type of mental toughness. One that I don't have a lot of practice in yet. But after 11 years of doing this, I know that mental toughness is real and can be learned, and that the outside world does impact my mental space, and that anything I can't change about the world, I can reframe to improve my self-talk. And I think that's a pretty good start.